Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm Sebastien Couture. I'm the host of Epicenter in the Interop, and I also do a couple other things in the space. And I'm really happy to be here today with Onur and Marko, working on the Interchain Builders program. And also happy to be here because I almost didn't make it. I was not paying attention to the time.
I was preparing to interview myself,
Yeah.
like how you rugged us, but then you came.
So I wanted to, we only have 20 minutes here, but I think, looking at some of the talks this morning, it's clear that there are values in this ecosystem that we all share, or that sort of like align all the people here. What are some of the core values that you think are important in the Interchain ecosystem, and how do they apply to what you guys are doing with the Builders Foundation, or Builders Program, sorry?
I feel like you asked me this like a week ago in Berlin too, but like at the end of the day, like Cosmos is a really big family, and no matter how like dysfunctional, functional it is, we all just come together because that original vision that Jay and Bucky proclaimed to the ecosystem and kind of proclaimed to the world, it was so powerful that it just held everyone together. And at the end of the day, it's like we love what we do. We love working on the tech we do, and we're just a big family, and at least that's for me the most important stuff.
It's a somewhat dysfunctional family, but it keeps
dysfunctional but functional.
Yeah.
I can confirm. I felt very welcomed when I joined the family. In my mind, the Cosmos ecosystem is just super interesting in the sense that it gives you the right balance between opinionatedness and sovereignty. And this just allows you to build things the way you want them to look like. And I think this is one of the core values, just the flexibility and the freedom to do things the way you want them to be, but at the same time provide you kind of the primitives so you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time.
Yeah, I think also I agree with this this sovereignty, but also some amount of opinionatedness, and I think like opinionatedness will probably increase over time, but hopefully like sovereignty will remain constant. So yeah, let's dive in. So what is the Interchain Builders, and who is it for, and what does it do?
So the Builders program is basically for anyone who wants to build in the Interchain ecosystem. And one way to describe it is basically before the Builders program, you would just have a paper map to navigate kind of getting to your destination. And we're just kind of a navigation system that helps you and tells you, hey, like turn left here, turn right there. This is the people you need to talk to. This is the documentation you should read here. These are the partners maybe you should have a conversation with. So we really try to help teams that build in the ecosystem, and building applies to both things. The technical part, which Marko's taking care of, but also kind of the business, legal, fundraising, all the other things that I'm working on with the team.
Anything to add?
It's to me the most important part is kind of like the high level idea of the Builders program and what it's really doing to the Cosmos ecosystem. It ties into Bucky's talk earlier of like right now we're in between this integration and illumination phase. I've been describing it as like Cosmos entering terminal velocity, where the ecosystems, and we're starting to see it now compared to last year with like Cosmoverse last year, it's really entering a phase of like it's about to go parabolic. It's everyone in the ecosystem, everyone here. The conference is twice as big as last year, and we're really starting to see the Cosmos ecosystem take off on its own without having to be shepherded by some of the core teams and ICF, as we've seen with the talk from Bucky, that the ICF also wants to bring in more public good funding from other chains in the ecosystem to help fund these core teams.
So as a program mentoree, someone who enters this program, so can you walk us through the process of getting into the program, and specifically what can one expect when they come out of it?
Yeah. So there's a website, it's called join.builders, where we have an application form. So after the application form, and we kind of do a quick assessment for whether the team is eligible, The eligibility criteria today is basically whether you use a component of the stack, which is Tendermint, SDK, IBC, but we also expand into WASM projects. And then there's a quick onboarding phase. And what we don't want to do is, we don't want to basically drag teams through lessons or things that they already know. So what we do is, we show them an a la carte menu, and we tell them basically, hey, you can choose between whether you want to look into token issuance and incorporation, fundraising, pitch deck review, or you want to look into go-to-market governance, a mainnet checklist, bootstrapping your validator set, and so on and so forth. So based on the requirements, we then go ahead and just schedule sessions with the teams, and again, like connect them to the people, whether that's opening a channel on Telegram, or that's just scheduling a call or providing them with the resources that they need. So I would say what they get out of that is, at the end of the day, time, saving time.
And so do you also connect mentorees with, say, like partners that can better help them? I'm thinking one thing that's really important for a lot of blockchain projects is like token engineering. Yeah, and so there are people who are sort of specialized in this one field. Do you also partner with other organizations that can maybe help guide some of the mentorees in more specific things?
Yeah, we do. So obviously we're 4 people in the team, so we cannot guide 50 teams ourselves. So we have partners on basically every side of the spectrum. We have a partner on the legal side, and then there's eventually law firms, but we also have technical partners and also validators, that at the end of the day help us to work with the teams.
It's a bit two-sided in the sense that you have these new teams in the ecosystem that are trying to bootstrap themselves, and we're kind of like showing them the foot guns that other teams have run into and how to avoid that. But also these new organizations in the ecosystem, funds, tooling, these companies that aren't actually blockchain companies, but they're building their company around the software. We want to bring them into the ecosystem and also help them become successful with these new teams coming to the ecosystem and existing teams.
And so I think you guys also, you mentioned funding. So what, by which means does a project then like go on and get funding? Are you allowing them or facilitating pitching to funds, or are there other organizations like the Cosmos Hub or the ICF or other funding mechanisms that you guys facilitate?
Right. At least right now, it's a very naive way. It was like we help them go through their pitch deck, we help review it, and then also we do the intros to potential investors. And I think that's like the kind of the V1 of that. And then the next phase is like something that I'm excited about is for community pools to start investing in these projects. So it's like the community of the Cosmos Hub also benefiting from the success of a team joining the Cosmos ecosystem. And so kind of like expanding into on-chain means of funding teams.
Yeah, I would say, there is kind of an understood way of funding, which comes also from the traditional VC world, which is there's pre-seed, seed, Series A, and so on. But at the end of the day, if you build an organization, you need to make sure as a founder or as a team that your organization is capitalized, right? And VC funding is one way to do that. And there we kind of educate the teams on what stage we would say they are in, and basically what type of VCs would be interested there. But at the same time, there's non-dilutive funding. There's other ways to basically secure funding for the project, and just creating education on the whole spectrum, and then kind of working with the teams towards the best possible funding mechanism is usually how we work. But yeah, we don't fund into teams directly because that's a very specific skill and task that you need to do, and we're no fund managers. So yeah, we don't do that.
Yeah, no, and I think, yeah, connecting teams with funds. I mean, like you're also going to fall into a situation where you have certain funds that are going to be, on some vertical and attracted to some types of projects, and others that aren't going to be. And also, if you have projects that are building, say, on the Cosmos SDK or like on interchain security, they may want to get funding from the hub, or maybe from some other organization that's funding projects like that, and maybe not funding projects that are building on Evmos or some other chain.
Yeah, definitely. We do talk to funds and VCs and everyone alike, and kind of get understanding of what they're looking for as well. So we know. So we're not just like because they are busy themselves. We don't want to just send them 50 teams and just they have their pick. It's like we want to send them teams that we believe that they would be successful with and teams that they would be interested in to make the team successful as well.
So I want to ask a bit of a spicy question. It's only a little bit of spice, though. So you guys were talking about this last year, I believe, at Cosmoverse. What's taking so long to sort of like? What's taken a while to get this kind of started and kick-started and yeah.
I mean, we actually recently had to slow down applications. There's 300 applications in the pipeline.
Okay.
And there's like 30, 40 teams that we're like...
I was misinformed.
that we're like having almost weekly calls with. On top of like everything that Onur mentioned, there's also like architecture calls. I also work on the SDK, and so the teams also have a direct access to developers and developer relations within the interchain stack.
All right. Well, then, what kind of projects are you seeing, and what are the most, say, like promising things that you've seen come through the program?
I mean, there's projects from all sorts of areas and all sorts of stages. But I would say most projects are definitely interested in building public blockchains. And this was also one of our theses, to basically, with the Builders program, help to increase the number of chains, the number of IBC connections, the number of transactions, just basically contribute to adding more zones to the ecosystem. So in that sense, I would say, I mean, there isn't really one specific area I would be able to point to. There's DeFi, there's gaming, there's a bunch of interesting things. We also work with, more established teams that are kind of bigger and known. It's not just the kind of very young teams or founders that just get started, but also, for example, if you are a team, looking into getting into the ecosystem, we might just have like 2 or 3 checkpoints, but we also work with you. So it really can be anything.
So we were talking about this at dinner last night, and one of the things I think that is maybe lacking in the ecosystem, or is taking some time to get moving, are, I guess at some point I would have called them enterprise use cases, but I don't really like that term. I think more use cases that interface with real businesses, that interface with more tangible aspects of our existing economy. And I have this conviction that the Cosmos stack is really well positioned as a technology to onboard just like tons of institutions and more traditional types of businesses, just because it is so modular, and you can build it in a permissioned way or in a permissionless way, and there's ways to kind of gradient your way from being fully permissioned to then being permissionless. So for like an enterprise company that wants to build some sort of decentralized system, they can start fully permissioned and then move to permissionless. And I kind of have this, I wish that the ICF and Cosmos institutions would be spending more time on this. And in the Ethereum side of things, we've seen like the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance do a lot of work there. Consensus has also done a lot of work there, but I haven't seen this in the interchain so far. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? And is this something that the Builders Program could also take on at some point, or maybe as some other organization?
Yeah, definitely. So there are some teams in the Builders Program that are more of an institutional play. It's been very interesting talking with them about different designs, because they know what they need out of a blockchain. And it's not like, usually with teams that are like building public blockchains, they're like, okay, we're going to build this application, but they come with a different need, and they're like, we have these things we have to meet, these are the nice to haves, how do we do that? And then it's like me or someone from the SDK team basically just sit down with them on a call, and we're like, just kind of go through random ideas of like how we can create this with the Cosmos SDK and Tendermint. So Tendermint's kind of entered a phase of like, it's becoming the de facto consensus within like even research and schools when they study. And so I think that's lending a great hand to the Cosmos ecosystem to bring in institutional players, because everyone was kind of looking at Quorum and these kind of like well-established things, and now Tendermint's become that well-established stable software. It's funny to think of it as like old software and in blockchain because in the reality it's like 6 years, 7 years old, and for us that's like a 20 decades or something, and the real world it's like it's in infancy. So that's really lending a hand to like bring in more people. We want to do more institutional within the builders program. I think they need more hand-holding on the tech side.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something we haven't scaled up as much as we could.
And I think just like a framework to a framework that allows a company or some consortium or group of companies to start implementing this technology and have a roadmap to connecting to IBC or like basically decentralizing. Yeah.
So the stage we're in right now is basically we're building the foundation and this framework you're describing, which is really like just the path from an idea or a project to a life chain. And we consider this a public good. This is knowledge that should be available and accessible to everyone. I think, as Marko said, working with enterprises definitely requires a more professionalized services organization with solutions architecture and all these type of things. But they can, basically, once we open source our knowledge hub, which is going to happen 100%, there can be any organization, any services organization that can provide this enterprise services. Whether we are going to build that or not, I'm not sure yet. That definitely requires to scale up the team in terms of architects. But with the underlying knowledge base, I think it will be much more straightforward to enable this type of work.
Yeah, it would be great to see this, and I think it makes sense to. Maybe the Builders program can act as a way to kickstart this initiative, but it makes so much more sense to have like channel partners and consulting firms that have solutions architects use this technology. And I mean, one way to get into this world may be to like seek partnerships with like the big fours or whatever, who have like all of these enterprise clients or also building blockchain stuff. Like I mean, KPMG, I know in France, where I live, they just recently, like 2 years ago, bought a blockchain consulting firm, and they're not using Tendermint. They're using, I don't know, Corda or something. Yeah.
It's kind of funny because throughout the years, I think even when I started in 2019 in Cosmos, like I heard rumors of institutional players using Tendermint, but they're not willing to say publicly that they're using Tendermint.
I mean, they were using Tendermint in 2015 when, this company that I co-founded back then, we were doing institutional stuff and we were using Tendermint, and that company failed for other reasons. But yeah, I mean, it always felt natural to me. Like it always felt natural that Tendermint was a good match for like these types of use cases that we don't typically see sort of like in the DeFi, NFT, like degen world. Maybe just to end on here, like just your thoughts on public good funding and the role that the Builders program can play in maybe stewarding some of the stuff that's happening on the public goods funding side and funding infrastructure.
So this kind of goes back into Bucky's talk and the idea of like terminal velocity in the ecosystem. And one key objective within the Builders program is how do we get the next 5 chains that are going to be above 100 million, above 500 million, above 1 billion, and how do we grow those ecosystems to a point where they are as big as the ICF, as big as Osmosis, and all these foundations in order for the ecosystem to really grow. I think Cosmos is really like the only ecosystem that has multiple foundations as big as the originating foundation, and that's something that's like heavily overlooked. And this kind of ties into like the Cosmos Builders Foundation, which is meant to be a public good funding where teams can donate funds to help fund the core teams. And this is along the lines of the ICF also willing to release the reins and work with the ecosystem, be more transparent to bring in these other funding sources to help shepherd the ecosystem.
Okay. This is the Builders Foundation, which is another.
It's not a Cosmos project unless there's a naming conflict.
Okay. Where can people go to learn more about the Builders program and maybe even apply?
That would be join.builders.
Join.builders, that's the URL. Guys, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.